All right, so this is May 1st. We're in May already, everyone. And I'm just going over, this week's assignment of taking everyone's black and white image and taking it to further polish. And so this is kind of a give and take situation where if your black and white image is a little bit less polished, then you're going to have to put in a lot more polish on the color side of it to kind of finish it out, because the polished color image is what you're ultimately if this was a client situation, that's what the client wants, right? Um, and so I'm showing here like examples like what I'm expecting to see out of a finished polish thing. You've got cool lighting in here, and everything's taken to color, but it's not like the comic book color assignment where it was just kind of flat colors. It's like polished painting colors, right? Like things have to kind of have this like nice degree of polish to it. Also, the other thing that I've added to it like are elements of effects and elements of like extreme foreground. So for example, on this image you can kind of see what I'm talking about, where I just took some leaves and I blurred them out and made them really big, but don't have them overlapping my character too much, But these things are like basically leaves in the foreground and they're kind of blurry, right? And that creates a little bit of depth, like you would see in a movie or a film camera where it's kind of zooming in. My subject that I want you to look at is still in focus, but there, you could always put in like an extreme foreground element or a background element and blur those out. And the other thing to keep in mind too is like, because I was choosing like a fantasy scenario here, the arrow is magical, right? It's imbued with some kind of green energy here, and it's casting a light onto this character, which makes the lighting of the scene a bit more interesting than just a guy about to shoot a bow and arrow. He's got this green glow around him, and it's casting this green light over everything on the left side here. So that's something to keep in mind as well, is like, what can I do to add additional lighting, and how do I make that additional light like maybe a different color than my main light, and really make this thing look like a polished piece. The last thing that you'll notice here, what I did was I added bloom. And what is bloom exactly? It's a photographic thing actually, but basically it's if your camera's pointing towards a light source or a point that's really bright, then that lens, I think, will basically like make it look like that bright thing is having this glow around it, and it's creating what's called a bloom effect. And you'll see it over here. See, like in areas where there's a lot of light coming through in the back, you'll see like this kind of halo kind of bloom effect. It also tends to happen on top of like things that are like lit very bright as well. So like the top of his head right here, there's kind of this glow. And a lot of times bloom is used, in photography for, I don't know, like wedding photos or anything, to make something look kind of holy. You got this angelic bloom around everything. The old days in Hollywood, they used to put Vaseline on the lens of the camera, and that would make everything kind of blur out and bloom. And it was really a popular trick for like old Hollywood actresses, because then it would make the faces less detailed. and just kind of blur out, you know, and have a sort of bloomy, dreamy quality to it. Any case, that's hope. I'm hoping that we can get to something similar to this degree of polish. I won't be able to obviously take you know, today's demo example into, you know, such a high degree of polish in the time that we have, but I'm going to try to and I don't know, just address some points, you know, compositionally, lighting, that kind of thing, and maybe that can help out everybody take their pieces to the next level, um, or at least one step further. I try not to, like, you know, overshoot where it's like, oh yeah, and then you guys are gonna be like, you know, super amazing at this stuff, you know, at the end of one demo. No, it's this stuff takes a lot of a lot of tries and redos and things like that. Um, before I move further on, does everybody have their pieces who had homeworks? Everybody have those things turned into the Google Drive folder right here, just so that I can take a look at everyone's thing that they turned in. Um, for today's demo stuff, I just volunteered Andy to start with, just because Andy's usually pretty quiet, and so it's like, you know, let's talk about Andy's piece as well. But or if I could get around to somebody else's piece as well, is there anybody else that wants to volunteer their piece to possibly you know, take, you know, to as an example of like how I would fix it or change it from here on out? Anybody? No? Okay. Well, then we're just going to do Andy's piece then. Um, although I do see one thing that will help Jen out real quick. So Jen, what's happening on your piece? Just real quick. This is like a nice low angle, right? That you're looking at for Pee Wee Herman here, but the background is kind of flat to us, and so the background almost needs to be at that same kind of, you know, extreme angle in order for us to believe like we're actually down low. And so there's some tricks that will help you out, just so you know. So, for example, if we're that low down here, then we're going to actually see the first off, uh, we're going to see the undersides of his shoes. So let me just pick like a dark color. We're actually going to see the undersides of his shoes here, and also if you remember, like when we were doing the cylinder thing, right? Um, the cylinder, if you're down here looking up, then all these cylinders would actually be going this way. You see, like that. You know, like so. When it comes to this, the pants right here, what helps sell it is if the pants curve this way instead, right? So the pants would have to curve this way to help sell the fact that we're down here looking up. And this might not be, you know, part of the reference image that you initially got, but I'm telling you, this is how you sell the fact that you're down here in worm's eye view looking up. The other aspect of it too would be in the face as well. It's really weird too, because it's a hard angle to draw. Just first off, like right off the bat. It's one of the hardest things to draw. But a thing that tends to happen on the human face when you're down here looking up is the nose actually goes up a little bit, you know. So for example, my, you know, if I'm doing this, my nose looks longer. If I'm doing this, my nose is now closer to my eyes, and you could actually see the nostrils, etc., etc. So so there may be a little bit of that kind of, but then the problem there is when you're looking at somebody like this, it's hard to notice their likeness. So they don't look like themselves as much as you would recognize. So that's the difficulty on that. Um, but um, but basically, this is a very difficult angle to do. But the jaw would be like this. The nose would probably be a little bit higher up, um, and oh, come on. And then the eyes would actually have sort of this like weird like moon shape. So I have to actually draw this out. Like I have to think about his face like a series of like a cylinder like that, right? And so parts of this need to actually get fixed to kind of feel like I'm down here looking up. So this, for example, the eyes would actually do that. Oh, come on. Sometimes when I hit the color select, it doesn't do it. So I'm struggling a little bit with that. You know, this isn't perfect yet, but basically it'd be a little bit, I don't know, a little bit more like that, and then I go back and I paint out all this stuff that I drew here. But you gotta like think about it like it's looking up at them. The last thing I would do as well. Well, actually, before I do that, right here, right, this coat would probably have more of a curve to it as well. Come on, I'm trying to color pick this. Okay, cool. Um, yeah, this is hard. I would probably see a lot of the underside of this arm. You almost need somebody to pose for you. Um,
I had the intention of having somebody post for me, but then like, you know, the week seriously just got away from me.
sure.
But I will come back in and correct things.
Okay. Um, but beyond just the character himself, here's another thing that needs to kind of do a. This is so difficult. A good example of this angle is actually the Jessica Rabbit singing scene in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, because in that she's up on a stage, and the camera's looking up at her. So there's a lot of shots where you're down low looking up. Yeah, can't think of any other sort of dance things where you're down low looking up. It's a hard angle to do. But okay, so I'm selecting Pee Wee Herman out of the background. So I'm hitting Control Shift C, Control V, and just selecting him out of the background. And with the background, I'm just going to inverse select the background. Now you're going to have yours on a separate layer, so it'll be easier for you to do it. But I'm just going to pop out this background and put it over here. So what needs to happen with this background is it actually needs to have a bit more of this like skew going into perspective. And I know it's hard to see the way I've done it, but basically it's like it'll be like this a little bit. And what I'm looking at, or what I'm looking for here, are lines that help indicate, you know, how low we are and how much we're looking up towards, um, you know, the camera here. Come on, I'm trying to color pick this white and it's giving me black instead. And it'd be probably good to put in a couple of, you know, maybe curtains. I don't know, whatever it might be. They could be pillars or whatever. But basically, you need these diagonal, um, you know, sort of a perspective cue that you're looking up, and uh, you'll probably see a lot more of the bottom shelf of these things, of these shelves. So these shelving units, and I'm not sure, you know, they some of them have lights and such, but you'll probably see a lot more of that. It will help to make that background even more painterly than it currently is as well.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the the one filter that you like to use when you do that, and
It's
I couldn't.
called it's called cutout. So you go to filter, okay, and you go to filter gallery, okay, and then it brings up this menu, and this menu actually it really is like a menu. Like, look, you can choose color pencil, dry brush, film grain. You know, there's a lot of different options for you to choose from. But the one I like to use is called cutout. So let me shrink down this thing so we can see what it's doing to our image in the background here. So there's a neon glow. There's a watercolor one. The watercolor one kind of stinks though. It makes everything just kind of blotchy and dark. That's not what watercolor does, you know. Um, but the one I use is the one in the top here called cutout. And then what you can do is you can change the number of levels, you know, to simplify the amount of value, and then you can also up the edge simplicity. But you want to do it in a way where, you know, you can still kind of tell what's happening in the background just enough, but I don't want to look back there. um, and hit OK, and there you go, something like that. The other thing you can do is there's another filter called median, and you can find that in under filter, noise, median. And what that does is it just kind of, it'll show you it. You could just kind of increase the radius. Oh, you can do this in real time too, which is good. So I'm just changing the pixel count on how blurry to make the background. And sometimes that's kind of cool actually, because this has to do with depth of field, where a photographer sometimes has a very narrow depth of field in their in their lens, where basically you can only focus like a little bit, and then anything further away or anything closer gets blurred out, right? And a lot of wedding photos and such, they kind of narrow that depth of field and make the background all blurry, and the lights start doing this, like basically the lights turn into the shape of whatever the aperture of the lens looks like. So if your aperture of your lens is a bunch of hexagons, then the lights turn into a bunch of little hexagon shapes, and that's called a bokeh effect. And bokeh is spelled Bocce. It looks like bocce or something like that, but it's let's see. Bokeh. No. Bokeh lighting. Maybe I spelled it wrong. Ah, bokeh. Is it? Oh darn you! I don't. I guess I forgot how to spell bokeh. That's weird. Let me see. Oh, see now this thing's got me worried. Boccae. Is it bokeh? I don't know. Photography. Bokeh. Oh shoot! I really spelled it wrong. Sheesh. You would not have guessed that. Bokeh. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I always spelled it phonetically, I guess. I've been spelling it wrong my whole life. Okay. There we go. This is what I was talking about. So a lot of times in photography, you're gonna see these little lights in the background, all kind of magical and circular like that. This little girl. The depth of field here is very narrow. She's in focus, but the background's just a bunch of, it's a very. If you want to make something look magical and all that kind of stuff, you kind of do this for the background, especially for like low light situations, etc. But you can see, and so what that does is these little shapes or whatever is the shape of the hole in the lens um, that goes through. So, anyways, learn something new. So this is kind of creating a little bit of that bokeh effect by kind of blurring the background using this medium filter. And again, you find that under filter, noise, and median right there.
Okay.
Okay. So there's two ways to go about it. The medium filter gives you rounder, curved edges on your shapes. The cutout filter makes everything almost look like sharp pieces of glass. Everything's kind of angular on the cutout usually. But anyways, this is one way to kind of get that filter. Obviously, when you have your background in there, this stuff is going to be much better, integrated and painted in here. Okay, cool. Now on to.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, just trying to get that upward angle is really difficult. And actually, Andy here's got another big challenging thing in the image here. Yeah, if you guess what it is, it's actually several things, but one of the big things is that foreshortening of the spear that's coming towards us right now. So what's happening with the spear in this image is it's coming towards us, right? It's coming towards the camera right now, and let's say it's doing this. It's supposed to look like this, right? Like what my hand's doing. Let me stop sharing so you guys can see my hand. Okay, so the sphere is supposed to be doing this, right? But because it's a really difficult thing to get the perspective right. It's almost doing a little bit of a bend at the end and just kind of going flat towards the camera, right? And that's just draftsmanship. It's very difficult to do. I can't always get it perfect either, and this is why I will rely a lot of times on photo reference or models or just getting getting something that can represent it. Like, I don't know, if I took a piece of paper, got some tape, and cut the paper into the shape of the spear tip, glued, like taped the end of it to the end of a pencil, and then kind of like pointed towards me. And the trick is you have to close one eye, because if you're looking at it with two eyes, then you're looking at it with binocular vision. So you're actually going to be seeing two different angles that the spear is going to be coming at you at. So the trick is actually to close one eye if you want to get good foreshortening happening. And basically you're just, your your loved ones are going to walk in the room and going, "What the hell are you doing?" You're like, "I'm trying to get the foreshortening right." Why are you pointing a pencil right in your eye? Yeah. But anyways, that's a little bit of that. So let's fix up before we go any further into coloring or anything like that. We have to make sure that all of our compositional elements in the black and white phase are don't have any tangencies and all this kind of stuff. They're in a good place, because no matter how much I polish, something that has a tangency or something wrong with the anatomy or perspective, no matter how much detail I add to it, it's not going to fix it, unfortunately. So this is the original piece of reference that Andy was using here. So let us try to, well, you know what? I could just grab this guy and put him in the image right here, just so that I have that as a reminder. But I'm not going to follow this
Professor?
reference completely. Uh-huh.
You're not screen sharing.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Very good. Very good. Screen share number 2. Yeah. And share. All right. Does everybody see my screen now? Okay. So what I'm doing is I just grabbed this piece of reference, dragged it into this picture, and just have it off to the side. I'll hide it eventually when I do the final thing, but it's good to have this handy. Let me clear my menu a little bit so I have more space, and just so that we can take a look here. So you guys can see what I was talking about with the spear here is, the other thing that I'm seeing on here. Let me just draw it out in red. So, and Andy, I'm not picking on you. This is stuff that everybody needs to learn, and this is stuff that everybody does in their images, and we need to just get a good eye for it, and be able to indicate it when it happens. So this is creating what's called a tangency, and if I drew it out, you'll see what I'm talking about. You see the tip of that spear is coming to a point, and that point is actually touching the edge of my canvas right here. Well, that's creating what's called a tangency, and our eyes tend to want to go where converging lines meet. And so now what that does is it sets a viewer's attention to the edge of the screen instead of right here, which is what I would want us to look at. So one way to fix this is to either make the spear, further away from the edge of the screen, or go off the screen, right? But before we do that, let's just take a moment and take a look at the drawing aspects of it, because I think we can actually use a little bit of a redraw. So what I'm doing right now is I'm creating a new layer on top of Andy's piece right here. And I'm just kind of giving it a sort of a white kind of transparent gradient. This is like me creating like a piece of tracing paper. And then I'm just gonna draw on top of it. So some perspective issues. First off, that the hand is really bothering me as well. So let's fix this arm. In order to fix this arm, we need to know like, okay, so this guy here, check this out. That's his shoulder. There's his elbow. Okay. And then this is his forearm. And then that's his hand, right? If I broke it down for you, that's kind of what that looks like right there. However, in this drawing here, we see that the shoulder's not coming towards us. The shoulder's actually going straight up and down. And then the forearm is missing because the hand's covering it. So that's what we need to fix here. So shoulder, forearm, okay, elbow, okay, shoulder, bicep, elbow, and then here's the forearm, which means the hand would actually be about here now, something like that. You see the difference there? The other thing I did not like about this guy's pose is his torso is kind of doing this weird like angle like this. And then what that's doing is giving like this like dad bod pot belly look to it. And so what you want for a warrior heroic kind of pose instead, and actually this is one instance, Andy, where the model actually makes a big difference as well. So if you were going to do like spear fighting and all that kind of stuff, look up like, you know, the movie 300 with Zack Snyder directing. You know, it's like big buff guys, and every single one of their poses is like super heroic and all that, you know. And so one way to do it is to make the curve go the other way, where it's like chest out, right? Lead with the chest and broaden that chest. And that immediately makes this person look, you know, like, I don't know, more, I don't know what to call it, like brave? I don't know. It's like chest out, you know, you lead with that. Yeah. So there's that. Oh, come on. Why is this not making a mark now? Control D. Photoshop's been giving me some issues ever since I updated it. They gotta be careful because other people are coming into the market and the other programs are free. So you gotta, you know, stop giving me problems, Photoshop. Okay, so here's a chest out version, which means that the arm in the background is going to get covered up a little bit more. Just a little, I don't know, the way I learned how to okay, 2 points on a object like holding a broomstick, or even harder, 2 people dancing, or somebody riding a bicycle. You know, there's all these points of contact with the object around it. Those are some of the hardest things an artist will draw, you know, because you got to match, you know, I'm touching, you know, I'm touching this here, right? But I also have to make sure that this is lined up, you know, in space here. And then now on top of that, we're doing this. Now, you know, now where did my elbows go? Where do my arms go when this happens, you know? And so this is actually really difficult to illustrate sometimes when there's 2 points of contact on something. The the method that I was taught to help out with that is actually fairly simple, where you draw your cylinder, which in this case is the handle of the spear, right? So you draw that. Okay, so let's draw that. And I want to make sure that this thing is not like parallel, right? It's got to converge because it's coming towards us, right? And then you figure out, where do I want my other hand to be? So instead of drawing a arm instead of drawing the arm from the shoulder down, you just draw like where I want the hand to be, and then you figure out what's connecting the shoulder and that hand later, So it's actually easier to do that way, as opposed to drawing it, from the shoulder, and then you got to figure out the angle, and then you got to, go towards that angle. I'm trying to think of an analogy for that. It's like that old arcade game, like Puzzle Bobble, where you're shooting this ball and you got to figure out the right angle to shoot the ball in to yeah. So that's hard. So what's easy is you figure out the endpoint first. So in this instance, if the endpoint is somewhere here, for example, then I just draw that hand. And then now I figure out, how do I connect this hand to that shoulder, right? As opposed to drawing, whatever. So here, I would imagine there's a bicep about here as well. And that's my drawing there. Andy, you're probably taking a look at this stuff and going like, these are very subtle. It's so close to what I had, but they make all the difference. And they're actually what a lot of professional artists look at for those cues, just so you know. The other thing that's really cool about this character's pose actually is the way the head is tilting down. The chin is close to the neck. He's looking down, but the eyes are going up. And we lost a little bit of that. The head here is now tilting up a little bit more, and less. That makes it less aggressive, right? Andy, is this a male character or a female character that you're drawing?
It was gonna be a male, but it somehow turned into a female.
Okay. What would you like?
I'll stick with the female.
Okay. So in general, body proportion, and these are just going off of whatever traditional body proportioning techniques for artists. In general, on a male character, the shoulders are broader and the hips are narrower. On a female character, then the shoulders are narrower and the hips are broader. And so that's kind of, from far away, as far as a silhouette goes, that's generally how we tell right away. So for example, if I was to draw two people right here with, rib cages, okay, and hips, right, and legs, right. You guys see what I'm drawing here? Like, it's basically like people. So if I was going to make the one on the left here a male character, I would just make the shoulders come out a little bit further. And if I was going to make this one a female character on the right, I would make the shoulders come in a little bit more. And then I would maybe make the hips a little bit wider than the rib cage, and then you'll get this curvature. and then on the male, the hips are about maybe as narrow as this, but then if the shoulders are broad, then it starts creating a somewhat V shape. And we could talk about, this isn't always the case. Yes, absolutely. This is not always the case. If the woman was a swimmer, she would have very broad shoulders. If she was a surfer, she would have really broad shoulders. So there's always exceptions, for any rule like that. But if the guy was, if the guy was like me on the couch all day, there would be more of a stomach, and the shoulders would not be as, So exactly right. We get that. Any case. All right. So the other thing to help sell your foreshortening, Andy, here is are these lines right here, and you're kind of doing it already, which is good, but you just got to be consistent with it. Meaning, even the spear tip is going to actually follow this as well, and this is difficult. What I'm about to do. It's almost. This is an instance where having reference is going to help a lot more, because, okay, I'll tell you why it's difficult first. Okay. Things going in perspective, they're supposed to be larger as they come towards us, right? But what does a spear tip do? It narrows at the front of it. So like a spear tip, like other things in life, like a boat, drawing a boat is the same problem, because the front of a boat, the front of a ship is a point, right? The front of a spear comes to a point. Well, if it comes to a point, how do I show that it's bigger because it's coming towards me? It almost goes, it goes narrower instead, right? And so that's where it becomes difficult, and that's where perspective is kind of fighting you. Things that can help would be, what does a spear do, though? A spear jabs forward, right? And let's say, for example, if this guy's been doing that a lot, stabbing people, stabbing, shields and other objects. What does that do? That creates scrapes along the surface, right? Other things that it does is it'll probably have some blood, and then you can make those scrapes and the blood parallel, and the tip of it comes to a point. So what would that look like, right? So if this thing had a bunch of scrapes, the scrapes would actually follow traditional perspective like this, right? You get what I mean? Like, I'm drawing some perspective lines here to kind of, and I'm just eyeballing this. This is not, if you put a ruler up against this thing, it's wrong all over the place, right? I'm just eyeballing this right now, but just trying to get across the point. So, for example, if there's blood at the tip of the spear, we want to make sure that the blood would be converging, in parallel like that. Even though the outer shape of this spear comes to a point towards us, the surface detail of it, and this is also where we've got to start getting some reference. So I'm just gonna hold right now and go like, how does a spear attach to the handle? I don't know. There's so many ways that can happen. Spear. Okay, so it looks like they molded it to go into a cylinder, and then the cylinder is what attaches to the handle. So a spear would not end at, you know, at this front part. And if it did, it would require all these things to kind of tie it down, right? But what a spear should actually do is end at the cylinder part right here, so that you can bolt it in, or, you know, tie it down or something. Okay. Again, this is a weird aspect of art that you know, let's just say it takes a lot of research, and then you kind of become like one of those people that knows a lot of little weird trivia along the way, because you're looking up this stuff and you're like, well, did you know that, you know? It's like so from that, I'm learning that this spear does not end here, right? This spear actually ends, or the spear tip, that is, you know, the spear tip actually ends probably somewhere like right here instead, which also means that this thing will somehow kind of mold into the spear tip as well. So there's going to be, if I was going to run something along the surface here, it would be like this, and then it would start curving around like that, and then it would go like that. You get what I mean on that, on the surface shape of this? Like this would still be curved, right here, but then this area would just go flat like that. Like that. Okay, so hands are hard. Positions of hands are really difficult to do. Let me get my roll of. Okay, so what you have on the hand position is something like this. Okay, and this is like a easy default hand to kind of draw, because it's basically a fist, right? However, when I start tilting my let's see, when I start tilting my wrist, this starts getting really uncomfortable all of a sudden, right? So what does a person naturally do is they kind of change the hand position to be a little bit more diagonal, right? And that lessens the tension on this wrist, right? So if this guy's in the front like this, the hand position is no longer like a fist like this. Like this hurts. This hurts to do this, right? But it would be less tension to do that. And what does that look like on the side? Now it looks like a diagonal. Instead of this, right? It's doing that. Okay. And the shorthand that I do to draw this, mittens with an index finger. So these three I kind of put together. The index finger I make a little bit separate and a little bit more forward, like a trigger, right? So this would be closer to like a trigger hand of some sort. Same thing if I'm sword fighting, right? Like doing fencing. This would be the kind of hand position I would draw as well. Okay. So it's so that's hard. And that's also where, you know, having somebody to pose for you is really handy. So I'm gonna try to attempt this right now, but it's gonna be not right. It'll look something. I'm trying to angle my hand to the camera right now to kind of take a look at what this might look like. I'm gonna hit screenshot. Okay. I'm gonna grab my image of a paper roll and I'm going to Daniel, you're cheating. Yeah. What of it? You know, there you go. This is what you got to do, everybody. This is what you got to do. Okay. Be your own model. But you can see how hard that is. That index finger, like how far does that wrap around, you know, and all that. So I'm just going to kind of erase out a little bit because this indication that I had before, which I don't know, looks like an olive. It looks like an olive in a martini. It was just an indication. So I'm just gonna draw this out and take a look here. So make sure that whatever is coming in contact with the spear is got a little bit of this curvature to it. You all can see that curvature right here, like this, right? There's a little bit of a curve going on right there, right? It's conforming to that perspective. Okay, so something like that. And I draw the other thing as the rest of my fingers as sort of a mitten shape overall. It's like a mitten with fingers, but you just kind of cluster it together a little bit more. It's easier. And then maybe have the thumb roll around here. And maybe have a knuckle there as well. Okay. You probably see the front of that thumb a little bit, and here's the angle. You might get a little bit of knuckle action right here. And that's kind of the hand right there that I'm looking for. And this is the forearm, so the forearm just goes kind of into this part right here, which doesn't get muscle, just so you know. This part doesn't get muscle. The muscle's like the meat is here, right? This is all tendon and bone and skin. So there we go. And then just kind of clean it up afterwards. But that's kind of a okay. I don't know. There's little subtleties, like for example, this finger looks longer. This one looks slightly shorter. So you can kind of indicate that as well. Maybe. There you go. The hand back here. This guy's got his hand kind of funny, where I'll show you. He's like holding it like at the end, like he's doing this or something. I'm not sure if that's how you would hold it. I think he's only holding it that way because his spear was not long enough. So in our instance, I think this is, you know, this should be probably holding it kind of more naturally, like how you would normally think one would hold a spear. And then there's knuckles here, stuff like that. Okay. Downward head, which was something we were talking about before on the pose. So this is the head. And if it was going downward like this, right, then a lot of these indicators would also do that. So for example, if there was like a hood on this character, and the hood might do this sort of point, sort of like Assassin's Creed, and then this would come up like this still. He's very COVID compliant. And then we've got eyebrows. The eyes, you had the mascara on it. We want to keep that, Andy.
Yeah.
Okay. Something like this. And if you make the eyes just kind of go to white, it makes the character look zombie-like, makes the character look like they're kind of supernatural but a little bit soulless at the same time. The saying is the eyes are the windows to the soul, and so I generally try to at least imagine where the pupils would go, at least, so that there's a directionality to where this character's looking. Something like this, and there's like a nose and the hood. So if the character's pointing down, then the hood might, you might see a little bit more of the inside here. And then you've got this neck cowl thing going around. Actually, this is where getting a model would really help, and actually making this kind of hood and the neck wrap around. That's where it's really going to help, because this is actually really hard to do. So because these, the hood's basically coming in contact with itself, and so you might actually want to get somebody to wear a hoodie and a scarf in front of you, just so you know what's happening here with the cloth. Something like that, I would imagine. By the way, this is actually a really good. So you've got the tassel thing right here at the tied to the spear here, like here. That's cool. That's a good way to flow it. I would make the two different sizes, just so you know. One shorter than the other. Okay. And the other thing what I would do is this scarf right here, I would also take advantage of the wind, and maybe your scarf does this as well. Now you're gonna catch me right here. Yeah, that should not touch the edge of the, yeah, something like that, right? Maybe it's kind of tattered because it's a battle, maybe this thing's kind of got some holes in it, so I'm just gonna erase out and punch some holes in it, like that. This is also a good opportunity to like research armor as well. Like, for example, how did the abs move? If you have armor that comes to a point down here, if this person does a sit-up, they're going to jab themselves in the stomach, right? So a lot of times armor actually conforms to, upwards like a rib cage would, or flat. So something to keep in mind on your designs in the future as well. I watch a lot of like YouTube videos on like armors and how they would be shaped and things like that, where people actually make armor. There's a lot of YouTube videos of people that 3D print out an Iron Man suit, and they had to make a ton of modifications to the Iron Man suit. Like, even though there's a perfectly, that looks like Iron Man 3D model that's out there, when they actually print it out and put it on, they're like, oh, I can't bend anything. I can barely move in this thing, and so there might be more gaps on the joints than you would think. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So just for simplicity, I'm just going to make the bottom part here chainmail or something like that, right? And you don't have to you could just indicate chainmail. You don't have to paint out every single rivet and every single, little thing there. The only part where you really want to get detailed is probably in the focal point, which would be this head area right here. Okay. I think this leg on the back here is looking really skinny on you. So let's do some drawing here. Pelvis, as we said, if this is female, let's make the pelvis a little bit larger. And then let's make this leg come towards us. So anything that we put on this leg is going to turn this direction for the cylinder. Anything we turn back on this back leg is going to turn that direction, right? And then the leg back there. We still want her to look strong, so I would put a little bit more muscle in that calf, I think. Oh, what was a perfect one is the bodyguards in Black Panther. Do you remember that?
Completely forgot about them.
Yeah, they have a cool name, like the Deja Major or something like that. Where do you get these? But they are great reference. They would be a great reference for you to look at because they all fight with spears and they're armored and they have female proportions. You could see kind of how the artists that designed it, how they arranged the armor in a way where it keeps her mobility. It keeps the mobility still there at the same time it looks armored up, badass armored up. So look them up. What's the name here? Dora Milaje. Dora Milaje. So there we go. And you might find really cool poses here too, right? When you look this up. So I would look towards that for some of the armor, quite frankly. And then you've got like a loin, like an armored loin cloth thing here with plates on it. So that's one thing to really think to yourself, like, how is this assembled again? Is it a metal plates that are riveted to chainmail or metal plates riveted to some piece of cloth like canvas? What's happening here? So something like that. Lastly, the mountains in the back. Right now, the 3 mountains in the back here are relatively similar in size. So what we can do to make it more dynamic is to make maybe one's tall and skinny, another one is short and wide, and, that kind of difference, right? And in general, you've got kind of the right idea here. I'm just going to draw this on a separate layer though. So if this was the short mountain, then don't have it touch the spear, right? Like that. And then if, you know, if this was like a large mountain, maybe it goes here and then it goes up afterwards. And I'm looking at it in a way where it's like, how do I make it not create a bunch of tangencies on this character, right? Like this character still needs to look like she's, well, maybe it goes beyond the composition too. You know, that could work actually. See, this is like a more interesting shape for your mountain. You just like carving it out of here, like maybe like that too. I don't know. I kind of like my previous one here. Yeah, that's fine. And so this large one is in the front, right? And then this little tiny one right here is also in front of the large one. And then you're gonna have to figure out the transition of how does it go from mountain to this grass in front of her, because otherwise it's just gonna look like a cardboard cutout of a mountain on a stage play, right? So there's gonna have to be a whole lot of depth indicators right here at the base of the mountain versus this grass that she's standing on. You're like, well, how do I look for that? Well, just look up some reference. So mountain. So this is like a good indication, like if there's snow on the mountains and if it kind of rolls down into a more landscape shape, or maybe there's foliage at the base of the mountain right here, and then it starts turning into grassland afterwards. But for sure, your values in the back need to be a lot lighter than the values in the front. And that's one big way to tell. And if you see, here's another great one. See how at the top peaks of these mountains, it doesn't have as much of this grass and foliage, but at the base, there's a lot more. So that's actually a really good thing to keep in mind as well. And if you wanted to, you could probably do some photo bashing and kind of get generally what you want out of that as well. But you just got to make sure your values are good on it. After next week, you know, we're going to be moving on to a fantasy landscape assignment. And that's where we're going to go really deep into photo bashing techniques. It's what a lot of matte painters do. And, you know, it's like I could take this photo and put like a castle here or something cool for the background and just create like my own little Shangri-La or whatever it might be. And that's, you know, that's what a lot of background painters for films and for games do for, you know, also concept artists do for creating sort of vistas off in the landscape like that. So something to keep in mind coming down the pipe. Okay, real quick, I'm just gonna block in sort of value wise how I'm picturing this to show up. So make her a little bit lighter, but still darker than the background. Right. I'm gonna have to paint. Come on, color pick. Paint in the rest here. I think he also had some cool armor on the sides here as well. But and then, oh yeah, the tip of the spear here has a little bit of this. Cool. Cut out. So if she's this, you know, if the shadows get this dark on her, then the mountains can't get nearly that dark. So the mountains, if I was going to do this background here, the mountains got to get a lot lighter. Okay. And then the background here is going to get even lighter than that. Up. And this is how I get a fairly quick block in. And something in between this value and that sky. Let's make it a little lighter. Where's my light coming from? That's a good question. Let's see, what was on your original one? Light coming from the left-hand side? We can do that. Cool. So on this mountain, there's some kind of it's almost like a sunset, maybe. If it's coming right from the side, that means the sun is pretty low on the horizon. And that means long shadows and kind of a warm purple kind of palette to it where you're approaching sunset at that point. Anybody have any questions as I'm just painting away here? Sometimes I could definitely get lost in the act of painting and, you know, not explain myself. If I wanted to show the compression of space, I did this on one of Steve's homework assignments where as you get closer to sort of the horizon, the plants and the details off in space get a little bit more like slivers, right? And then when they get towards you, then they get a little bit wider. But off in the distance, it's all like a bunch of little horizontals like that. Something like this. And then on her also, we could create a new layer, do a clipping mask, holding down Alt, clicking between the two. And then we can also paint her bright on the left-hand side as well. Maybe a little bit on the nose, a little bit on this mask right here. Side here. I might be going kind of fast for everyone, but I'm just trying to be mindful of the time. Also, you know, metal, chrome, you'll get a lot more streaks like this, these high contrast streaks to kind of indicate that sort of chrome look. Get these fingertips right here. And then maybe this spear just gets a lot more light on the top. if this is chainmail, it'd just be a series of little dots there. And then this is, oh, actually, this is metal. Let's do that chrome effect again. A little bit of muscle right here, the shin. The thigh has a muscle here as well. I don't know if that's going to be armor. Haven't figured that part out yet. You're going to have to do some armor research. That's just my guess on the lighting right there for a general light. For our final thing, you might want to consider having like, if this is like sunset, you might want to consider having some kind of a fire or something indicated on the right hand side. And so let's say, for example, well, let me just do this real quick with like a picture of a fire of some sort. Copy, paste. Some kind of a flame happening here. And give it a little bit of a diagonal. Since the wind is blowing from the right-hand side to the left-hand side, the flame would also be kind of going at that diagonal, right? That makes sense. And then I'm going to set this to screen. Okay. See what I did there? And I'm just going to up the contrast so the fire just kind of pops out. So let's say, for example, if something was on fire here, I don't know what it is. A wagon? Could be a wagon. Could be like some kind of a, it would have to be wood, right? Like it wouldn't be a rock. A rock would not catch on fire. It would have to be some kind of a wood or something like that. So let's say there was a wagon wheel or something like that here in the foreground. I'm not sure. Make this a lot larger. Some kind of a wagon wheel that's caught fire, and there's, oh, come on. There's some kind of a underlight happening on this thing, and it's getting burnt to a crisp. All right. So that's kind of a cool, I don't know, a little bit of cool storytelling that you can do here. And what that would do is it would allow us on this character to add another light source. So I would create another layer, clip mask that, and then this would be your secondary light coming from the right-hand side. And it would not be as bright as your primary light. But this is how you get the bottom of that spear tip kind of lit up, you know. You're like, Daniel, you're making this assignment so hard. It is, but it improves the painting, and that should be the goal, not how difficult it is. You know, we always got to keep challenging ourselves on that. But you get what I'm saying here? Like, look how cool that looks. Just having like flick of the flame touch, you know, bits and pieces here of the armor and all that kind of stuff. Like, let's say, for example, there was like some armor piece right here, and it was getting like the cool streaks that you see coming off of that armor. you know, a little bit off of this. See, that sells the heck out of it for me, right? This might get a little bit out here as well. And maybe a little bit on this thigh and this part down here. Right. See, now I feel like the composition's starting to get more balanced, you know. And there's always like little tweaks you can make along the way. Maybe this mountain should be a little bit make her head pop out a little bit more than how I had it, you know. I could always change that as well. Oh, what does everybody think? Like, everybody kind of get an idea as to why I made the changes to this that I did. How anybody get any ideas as to how they can improve their own pieces, kind of based off of what I've indicated here, you know, adding a bit more depth, something in the extreme foreground, like in the instance of this wagon wheel. By the way, this wagon wheel, if you blur the heck out of it, it's almost done. You just go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and you can just up that Gaussian blur a little bit. It's almost there. I would probably not use black because you never want to use complete black. So add a little bit of color to it, obviously. But some kind of that fire color would be great. But yeah, that's almost there. Because it's so extreme foreground, you don't want the detail to be there. It's just like a framing thing, right? All right. I know that I'm not taking this demo here to complete finish polish, but you'll see it in today's, you know, the canvas stuff. That's where I took my time and took, you know, you'll see in like these 5 parts. And I'll explain what I'm looking at. I'm constantly looking at cool pieces of art from other artists on the key art aspects of things, keeping those on my screen as I'm doing this stuff, and really trying to figure out, like, how do I get my piece closer to, another artist's style, right? So in here, I'm looking at the what's called dappled light. So if you're underneath a bunch of trees, sometimes the sunlight comes in through the branches and in between like the gaps in the leaves, and you get these little dots of sunlight on you, and that's called dappled light. And it's usually this like nice blurry kind of shape that falls on you, and it's cool because it shows that it wraps around your form as well, right? So the cylinder of your arm, it's going to actually follow that contour, which is kind of cool as well. So, so I look at dappled lighting. I look at, they have it on this character here as well. See on this cat creature's face right here, there's some shadows and some lights, and they all just kind of happen to fall just in the right spot, right? And so I'm doing that on the tree here and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, so yeah, the tutorials, they go on for a bit, and sorry if they go on too long, but these assignments are they're difficult. I'll put these images up on our Google and point everybody to them as well. And if there's no further questions, anybody have any last minute further questions on what the assignment is? Basically, take this piece all the way to finish color. Anybody have any questions about that? So just in case, I'm trying to show everybody the exact example that I have on my previous stuff in my demos. So by you know, this last week's homework assignment, taking your image to pretty much a high level of degree like this, where most of it is mapped out, and then for next week, I expect something where it's full colored, maybe some cool effects, you know, cool lighting on top of everything, you know, finished polished image. Okay. I understand some of you might be late with those assignments because it is a challenge, but just try to get everything in before you know, before the final. Okay. Oh, by the way, something else I would do on this. I always got that one more thing, sorry, you know, but something else I would do on this would be excuse me. Woo. Excuse me. Sometimes it's kind of cool just on a separate new layer, just to put just a bunch of like debris. Let's call it ash from this burning wagon wheel. And I'm just making like, okay, so the key here, make them different sizes, space them out differently from one another. The last thing you want is to form a pattern. So you do not want dashes that look like this, right? Because things in nature do not flow in the air that way, unless if they're already attached to one another. So what you want is randomness. Okay, so different distances apart, different sizes, that kind of thing. And what we can do with that is we just put a motion blur on it too. So I showed you guys Gaussian blur, which just kind of blurs it, you know, normal. But then you can also do what's called a motion blur, which has a direction that you can place on everything. So let's say, for example, if the wind is going top right to the top bottom left, or maybe completely horizontal. See, if I up the distance of the blur, you can see how the debris in the background looks like it's moving, right? Like that. Okay. So you can go crazy with this. You can, well, then it just looks like rain. So that's a good way to get rain effect. But something in between like this is kind of cool. You know, and what did I just do? I added all this motion into the piece as well, right? All this stuff going on in the background and foreground and all that kind of stuff. So that's something to keep in mind, you know, any effects, any kind of like indications of motion, any flow really adds a sense of dynamics to your piece, you know, that I would like to see as well. All right. And that was so easy to do. I just did that in like 2 minutes, right? So something like that. And think about it, you know, like maybe, I don't know, Jen, maybe because it was a bar from the 1980s, maybe people were smoking. There could be like wafts of smoke, you know, moving in a cool direction towards Pee Wee Herman, right? You know, just, you know, try to think that way. And it's like I'm constantly, you know, when I'm making an image like this, I'm always thinking that way, going like, how do I, you know, invoke some kind of motion, or, you know, some kind of a past or what happened before, what happened after, what happens after this. You know, this little burning wagon wheel thing just added a whole story point of like, oh, something bad happened, and this person's trying to, prevent something bad from happening more, right? Or maybe this person's the bandit that is responsible for this. I don't know, so there's anything that you want on there. Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, thanks everyone. I hope this is clear. I know it's a lot of work, but it's probably going to be the best piece for your class assignments in your portfolio. That's why I strung it out to thumbnail, to black and white, then to full color. It's like taking like 3 full weeks to do this. I really want this assignment to be thought through and be polished. The one for next week is going to be just to give everybody like a little heads up on the one for next week. It's a fantasy landscape, and I hope everybody enjoys that one. And for that one, I cobbled together something pretty cool, I thought, which was this like gorilla King Kong kind of mountain, right? I just took a bunch of rocks and I slapped it on top of a gorilla, and I try to match the lighting values and the general shapes of the rocks to the gorilla's muscles, right? And basically a lot of this is photos just like bashed in together, and I just try to make sure that the photos work with the lighting and the contrast and all that kind of stuff. And so this is coming down the pipe. This will be the last assignment for the semester before we all just start putting everything in templates for the portfolio. But this is this is coming down the pipe. So, and this is actually takes less time to do because you're taking photos from all sorts of sources, up on Google or wherever. The proper legal way to do this is to take every single photo yourself, and that way you own all the rights to all of the photos, right? That's the proper, like if I was going to NFT this thing and go like, hey, this is my original artwork. Well, I took the photos, I photo bashed the photos, I put everything together myself, right? But not everybody does that. Just if you're gonna do that, then I don't know, make sure there's no watermarks or on the photos that you're grabbing, because if it says Shutterstock or some kind of a weird watermark on there, people are going to know where that came from. So anyways, if there's nothing further, that's pretty much what we're doing for this week, and then the following week for the rest of the semester. The semester is coming to a close, so let me just give everybody a forewarning. Make sure you've got some cool sketchbook pages that you could take photos of as well, so that we could have that as part of your templated page for your portfolio. And you're like, sketchbook stuff for your portfolio? Oh, believe me, I've interviewed a lot of artists in the past, and a lot of the artists, we were on the fence. We were on the fence with some of these artists until we saw their sketchbook, and then we were like, yes, hired, because this person thinks their pieces through, does the research, does a bunch of little sketch studies. It's not just like, here's my drawing, here you go. This person thought it through and looked at it from many different vantage points and angles, and try to figure out, like, for example, the shape of the rocks on the mountain, and this person like had like 5 different versions of the mountains before they settled on the one that they wanted, that kind of thing, so sketchbook pages, let's try to get like a solid 5 pages of your sketchbooks like put together in a template, for the final as well. But just giving everybody a heads up, because that's usually something that kind of sneaks up on people who are like, what, sketchbooks? I was like, yeah, I told you guys ahead of time, it's like, so yeah. All right, and with that, that's end of class for today. Everybody take a look at the demos, and thanks for turning in the homework assignments, and I'll see everybody again next week. All right. Okay.
Thank you.